Greetings from the cosmic horrors. The stars are right once again, and the great old ones are allowing us to talk about for 30 minutes H.P. Lovecraft, the horror writer who's a genre unto himself. I'm your cosmic host, Mark Griffin, executor of the Lovecraft estate on Yaga, joined in by two from Material World, David Guffey, a professor at Miskatonic University, and Richard Wilson, who is currently interning as a messenger to the outer gods. We learned in the past episodes about how at the age of 5 he read Grimm's fairy tales and Arabian Nights. At the age of 6 he was reading Greek mythology. Always avid for fairy lore, Lovecraft wrote in his essay Confession of Unfaith. I had a chance on Hawthorne's Wonder Books and Tanglewood Tales and was enraptured by the Hellenic myths, even in their Teutonized forms. Further, he came upon Harper's Half-Hour series, which collected various written works such as Tales from Shakespeare and the ABC of Finance. Lovecraft was fascinated by tales from the Odyssey for boys and girls. From the opening chapter, I was electrified, Lovecraft gushed. By the time I reached the end, I was forevermore a Greco-Roman. My Baghdad name and affiliations disappeared at once, for the magic of silks and colors faded before that of fragrant temples and fawn-peopled meadows in the twilight. His obsession perpetuated as he obtained an 1855 illustrated copy of Thomas Bulfinch's Ages of Fables, or Beauties of Mythology. I gave my time to the reading of the text, and in which the true spirit of Hellenism was delightfully preserved, and to the contemplation of the pictures, splendid designs and half-tones of the standard classic statues and pictures of the classical subjects, he wrote. He visited the classical art museums in Providence and Boston constantly, and collected small plaster statues of Greek masterpieces. He learned Latin and adapted a new name, Lucius Valerius Misasa, a name similar to an ancient Roman senator. The new name was more Roman than Greek because he felt that Rome had a charm on its own, recalling the stories he heard of his grandfather's travels to Italy. The fascination even went into religious practices. Around the age of 8, he regarded himself as a pagan, and even built altars to such Greek deities as Pan, Apollo, Diana, and Athena. His essay didn't reveal if anything was sacrificed. While in the woods, he sought out such mythical creatures as satyrs and dryads. Once he thought he saw them dancing under the autumnal oaks. During his fascination for Arabian Nights, he came to denounce Santa Claus as a myth, and he was arguing in Sunday school if God was real or not. By the time he was engrossed in Greek myths, he claimed he'd seen Pan in the woods. Later, he abandoned these beliefs for rational learning. Ere long, he wrote, I was more of a scientific student than a pagan dreamer. Still, the Greek myths influenced his writing. At the age of 6, he wrote his poetic version of Ulysses and the Odyssey Back Home. One version of the poem, the second edition, which he revised a few years later, still exists. Another work, Poemata Minora, Volume 2, was written at the age of 11, in which he called his pompous book, even though it is a 74-line poem. It was written in honor of such deities as Diana and Pan, lamenting the ruins of Rome and the uses of Apollo to critique on the vanity of human ambition. A few of the poems were later printed in the April 1919 amateur journal called Tryout under various names. His short story, Poetry and the Gods, co-written with Anna Helen Crofts, was a callback to Poemata Minora. As the narrator in the earlier works laments the destruction of the Greek pantheon, in Poetry and Gods, Marcia, the main character in the new story, welcomes the rebirth of the gods. According to some fans, their rebirth will evolve into the Cthulhu mythos. Hermes, messenger of the gods, is now Nyarlathotep, the so-called messenger of the great old ones, be it so much more. Pan is believed to have transformed into Shub-Nagara, the black goat of the woods, with 1,000 young. And Cthulhu could have been the Titan Typhoon, trading his multi-snake limbs in for tentacles. Cthulhu has also been compared to Dionysus, both of whom have died and returned to the living world. The Cthulhu cult and their rituals seem to be based on the mysteries of Dionysus. Lovecraft remarked in Poetry and Gods that the gods were never dead, but only sleeping the sleep and dreaming the dreams of gods, which echoes a phrase in Call of Cthulhu, that is not dead, which can eternal lie, and with strange eons even death may die. David and Richard have a little game for you.
Okay.
Yeah, Lovecraft
Sure.
loved to create a Latin-sounding or exotic nicknames for his friends in his circle. If I give you the nickname, can you figure out the real person?
Okay.
All right.
Give it a
Ready
shot.
for it? All righty. Bo Block.
Robert Block.
Or Bach, yeah.
Yes, Robert Block. Probably his most famous prodigy. Best remembered today for his novel Psycho, which spawned a film series and a few TV shows. M. Le Comte de Let.
Elsprague de Camp
No,
or
Derlet. Think of something that's
Oh, okay.
close to that.
Derleth. Okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
August Derleth, who championed Lovecraft after his death. And Mortimus.
I don't know.
Yeah, I got nothing.
All right, this will probably be more difficult. This is James Fernando Morton Jr., an old friend of Lovecraft who was an anarchist and who challenged many of the author's rigid beliefs. Bernapkis.
Wahoo?
Bernapkis.
Bernapkis. I don't know. It's on the tip of my tongue.
With Frank Belknap Long.
Hmm.
He was a horror writer who Lovecraft published some of his poems in an essay in his amateur journal. And Malik Tawas.
No, I don't know.
It's
Yeah,
E. Hoffman Price. He was a weird fiction writer who co-wrote Through the Gates of the Silver Key with him. That name comes from Price's short story, Stranger from Kurdistan. And Lovecraft also addressed him as the Peacock Sultan. And Rymel.
Rymel?
Rymel. It's spelled RHI-MHEL.
No.
Yes.
This is Dwayne W. Rymel. He was a writer of fantasy and detective fiction. He and Lovecraft almost started a fanzine together. And Clark Ashton.
Well, that's Clark Ashton Smith.
That's right.
No doubt.
He was part of the trendy of weird fiction writers. And Lovecraft would use his name and also that nickname in several of his fiction stories. Javis L.
No, no, nothing's coming to mind.
Yeah, I've got nothing there.
This is J. Vernon Shea. He was a Kentucky-born horror writer. He wrote a short story titled Necronomicon that Lovecraft read shortly before he died and made a few notes about. Joke here.
Nope.
This is Wilfred B. Talman. It was a play on his Dutch ancestry. And they wrote a story together called Two Black Bottles. And Sutrap Barnablaeus.
No idea.
It's
Me neither.
Farnsworth Wright. He was the editor of Weird's Tale. Osage.
No, I don't know. I don't know.
Okay,
Does the time buzzer sound if we take you in?
Just like stump the chump because that's exactly what it's doing.
Maurice W. Moe. He was a high school teacher in Wisconsin, a devoted amateur journalist, and a fervent and evangelical Christian in both subjects that listed sharp discussions from Lovecraft. He was the basis for Joel Manton in The Unnameable. Ordinus.
Say that again.
Ordinus.
Ordinus. I don't know.
This is Vress Orton. He founded in 1946 the Vernon Country Store, which is an American catalog, retail, and e-commerce business that still operates today. They met at a Manhattan literary party in 1925 and became friends. Lovecraft would visit him during his trips to Vermont. And Barlovius.
No idea.
Yeah, I got nothing there.
Does Bar not jar any memories or anything people Lovecraft might have known?
Who? What now?
Barlovius. I guess not. That was a nickname that was given to Robert Barlow by Paul L. Frank in the Night Ocean novel, which explored the relationship between the two. The story has Lovecraft using the nickname, but I can't find Lovecraft ever using it in any letters that he wrote. And I know Richard should at least get this last one here. Two Gun Bob.
Oh, Robert E. Howard.
Yeah, that was the
name. From those little comic strips. I knew it from there.
Yeah, they would have those. I think they're called The Adventures of Two Gun Bob. They had ran the Darkness comics in the back of Adventures. Yeah, he decided to drop the Latin when it came to Robert E. Howard and just like give him
give him a more conventional nickname.
Yeah, give him like a, kind of like a Texas name, And I found a related mystery online, LovecraftFandom.com, which is a somewhat reliable database for Lovecraftian deities, listed a great old one I never heard of. I can't find anyone else who has, and I was wondering if you all have heard of this person, Golotthus.
No, I can't say I've heard of that one.
No, it's not ringing a bell.
Yeah, it's according to the database, he is said to reside in the same domain as the Greek god Bacchus. Golotthus was cut into 10 pieces by Yig during a great battle. One of those pieces became an alabaster dish in Egypt, and that's all they say about him. They don't cite what story it came from, but someone did make an illustration of him. And he looks like something out of They Live, except he has reddish skin and has a pot belly.
Okay.
When I posted the question online, a lot of people had not heard of it either and thought that maybe it was just made up solely for that page. Probably someone hoping that someone else would use it in a story or a game. Lucius G. Abadie remarked, I think it's from the lazy Panesh out of the webs. So that's
could be.
Yes, anyway, but Golotthus, the god that has no home, And
okay.
Josh Duke, who's been helping me prepare for the podcast, thinks we talk about too much about Cthulhu and wants us to discuss other great old ones. And I thought Nyarlathotep might be a good one, the messenger to the outer gods. And what do y'all think?
What was it? The god of 1,000 forms was another one of his nicknames.
Let's see. He had quite a few. He's appeared under several different names. He's been taken on by other writers as well, and he's based on a dream that Lovecraft had when he was at 10 years old. Apparently, it stayed with him. But he always struck me as being kind of like more of probably one of the more sinister villains that pops up in Lovecraft stories, and he's kind of a reoccurring character because he does pop up a few times. Sometimes his name's just mentioned. And one of his other nicknames was the Crawling Chaos.
Right.
But Lovecraft wrote a story about Crawling Chaos. I get that word right eventually. Crawling Chaos. And but he doesn't mention Nyarlathotep in that one. And Stephen King used him as well. And do you know what character
specifically, or like what character that was like inspired by him?
Well, it's I guess it's kind of like it's in the gray area. Because do you know what stories he might have been in?
No, that's why I was curious because I was trying to think if I ever recalled him being mentioned specifically by name in any particular story.
And in The Stand, Randall Flagg is referred to as Nyarlathotep,
Oh, okay.
or accused of
Okay.
being him. And
Interesting.
and he also evolves into Walter Paddock, the nemesis of Roland in the Gunslinger series, sometimes called the Man
Okay.
in Black.
Hmm.
Yeah, and there's a historical figure that a lot of people read the first story about him. They think of, and they think that Lovecraft may have based him on this historical figure. Do you know who this person may be?
Oh, Nikola Tesla. I remember reading
Yeah.
a thing about that. Yeah, as far as the Tesla seemed, yeah, I can't remember who it was that made the connection to it, but thought that he had what is like a sinister aura about him that that linked into that entity.
Yeah, there was there are like little mentions, like things like that he communicated with other planets, and that
Mhm.
he kind of works with electricity and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah. As far as they possess some form of otherworldly or eldritch knowledge, to be able to accomplish the things that he did, or
Yeah,
was in communication with eldritch forces of some kind.
yeah. Lovecraft never mentioned any connection or anything. If he did base it on him, it may have been subconscious, or he just merely bothered to do that. But there is a Tesla versus Lovecraft video game, and I guess that would explain, why there's so much animosity between the two.
Oh, but
I
there's
always
also
thought of
the
him
comic
as,
series where they team up, so
Yeah,
it's just as much.
yeah. I always thought of Nyarlathotep as some sort of Egyptian type thing, because
he
of the way
was.
that just the spelling of the name,
Yeah,
Yeah, it does. But yeah, evoke very much kind of an Egyptian deity type of with that spelling.
like
he did.
Anubis or something like that.
Yeah,
Right.
he did start off in Egypt, but he since he's immortal, he can move on and do other stuff, and so he's moved on. Of course, Tesla is what is he? He's at least Eastern European.
Yeah.
So I guess the nationality is not right. That does seem like something that if Lovecraft was going to base it on him, he probably would at least got the nationality right.
Right.
That he'd be too much of a perfectionist for something like that. And there was a story that Len Carter wrote in 1975 called "Horror in the Gallery," and he says that Nyarlathotep is currently imprisoned on the planet Abbith, Abbith, and so that's his current fate according to Len Carter.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, and so we got a little time left, and since it's so close to Halloween, and this book is very Lovecraftian, how about Lonesome Night in October? That's one of your favorite stories, David.
Yeah, A Night in the Lonesome October.
Yeah,
Yeah, by Zelazny.
Yeah.
Right.
Roger.
Yeah. Roger.
Highly recommend it.
Yeah. What's your favorite parts about the story, or why don't you explain what the story's about for those that haven't read it?
Basically, a group of people who it's never actually stated outright, but they resemble like Dracula and Sherlock Holmes, or maybe he's Jack the Ripper. He's Jack the Ripper, I guess.
Well,
And then
both
there's
of them are in
Sherlock
there.
Holmes. Right.
Right.
And all these people come together, and they're trying to figure out who's on what side. And some of them are trying to open a gate to let in some creature from beyond, and the others are trying to keep the gate closed because it would be the end of the world. I think Frankenstein's monster is in it. The Wolf Man, maybe. It's been a while since I read it, but yeah, there's a whole gallery of those maybe famous Universal monsters, and some of the Victorian era people like Sherlock Holmes as well. So
Yeah, usually they're referred to like Jack and his dog Snuff,
right,
the Count and his bat Needle, the
yeah,
good doctor and his rat Bubo, and then there's some Shakespearean characters that show up in there as well. And the great detective and his companion is like the Sherlock Holmes.
Oh,
But they never have to they never do spell them out by name.
Right.
Yeah, that's the thing what I like the most about the story, as far as they're just kind of describing them, and then as far as if you know the characters, then enough of the context and the description of it gets you there, versus them saying, and then Sherlock Holmes appeared, and being
Right.
that overt about it.
Yeah, and of course, I like the because most times it takes from the point of view of the companions, like the animals.
Mm-hmm.
So I like that a lot, because it kind of gave like a different perspective of everything.
Yeah.
I think Snuff was probably my favorite character in the entire book.
It's a lot of fun. Highly recommended.
Yeah, and it's a perfect book to read during Halloween time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And all that, and all that, and that's all I have on the list. Have anything else y'all want to talk about?
Well, were we wanting to give the other Lovecraftian entities some screen time, since Cthulhu always seems to be the one who gets all the praise as far as that type of thing is concerned? Because we talked about, I guess, a little about Nyarlathotep. What about well, you think you mentioned Shub-Niggurath, earlier, the Goat of 1,000 Young? Because I think I remember when you were talking about Lovecraft thinking he saw Pan in the woods, that was part of his inspiration for the whole Black Goat of 1,000 Young, for that particular entity, which I've always kind of like, that particular elder god doesn't get as much love as some of the other ones, but I've always liked that one.
I think most of them just mentioned in passing. I don't think there's ever been
Right. Yeah. As far as their names are invoked when it starts talking about different characters and whatnot, and so that name will show up over repeatedly, or be talked about as far as like in the genealogy of the mother of this this entity and that type of thing. So.
Yeah, and I was trying to think of didn't Stephen King use him as well?
I believe so, but I'm trying to
I
remember
think so.
specifically, as far as where you see that character then used a little more by really other writers, kind of like taking that character and using them, and when there's a expansion of the Cthulhu mythos.
Yeah, it's like August Derleth, Robert Bloch, and Ramsey Campbell used him in quite a few of their stories, and of course he shows up in some of the role-playing games that they do.
Right.
True.
And Stephen King had a short story called Crouch End.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
And that had the Goat with 1,000 Young in it. And that's such a descriptive image. I just wonder where he got that from. The Goat with 1,000 Young.
Yeah.
What about Azathoth? Isn't he supposed to be a mindless pan flute playing entity in the center of everything?
What do they call it? The blind idiot god was one of the terms for it.
Yeah, that's
the chaos god.
Yeah, I mean that's about as Lovecraftian as you get. I mean, it's like nothing means anything. He's the total end and nihilism, and just sitting out there in the middle of the universe playing his little pan flute or whatever it is.
Yes, he's supposed to be the ruler of the outer gods.
Yeah.
And
I wonder if the Goat of 1,000 Young might have been inspired by the kind of like the Baphomet style goat, they used in a lot of occult imagery. If he might have like taken a bit of it from that, as far as that's concerned.
Very possible.
Yeah.
let's see.
Or maybe they took Baphomet
or vice versa. Exactly. The chicken or the egg.
Yeah.
Right.
Let me see what is in the Lovecraft Encyclopedia, since I have it so handy.
You can look it up.
Yeah, see what do they make mention about, like if the name came from somewhere, and because it is such an interesting, name. Don't tell me it didn't have them in here as an entry. Yeah, that's got to be.
While you're looking, I guess I'll give another shout out to the webcomic Lovecraft is Missing. And I've actually looked up and to see the author's name is Larry Latham, and he's deceased. So he never actually got to finish the entire story. And as of right now, the website that it was hosted on is gone. It's down. But you possibly could find it if you went to the Internet Archive to the Wayback Machine and look for it there, you could probably find the episodes there. I mean, I have copies of them I've downloaded, but I don't really want to share them out publicly since they are definitely copyrighted. So,
And the author is dead.
yes, he died, and his wife had mentioned that she was going to let his friends, I guess some of them who were artists and writers, finish up the story. But like I said, it's gone. I mean, the website's even offline now. It's gone. So.
Well, that's the Shub Negarev first shows up in one of his revision works, The Last Test. And wow, he addressed her as a she. So I guess she gave birth to 1,000 young.
Right.
How's that for a mother there? Can you imagine Mother's Day's card from her? And she was also she was also mentioned in Dunwich Horror.
Yeah.
And just because they're quoting from the Necronomicon.
Right.
And Whisper in Darkness. But most times it's kind of like, it's more like a name that's invoked. And
right.
It's not like Call of Cthulhu, which is like, kind of like becomes like a center, of a storyline.
Right. Yeah. Story focusing on that particular character as much as it is just kind of described and invoked and that kind of thing but then never really, a story that's about that particular character.
Yeah. And they don't give an explanation about like why the black goat of 1,000 young is supposed to be. They're not saying that he got that from Belaf or anything like that. They just say that it's probably more associated with Pan, and since he was greatly influenced by Arthur Micken's great god Pan. That thinks that and of course that story of the black goat was supposed to represent Satan. And it was a male figure in that one too. So, I guess like Lovecraft took a whole bunch of just like, different changes into that. And Jim Butcher mentions him in one of his Dresden Fowl stories.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And Joe Hill, looks like he mentioned him in his Lock and Key series.
Yeah, there's
as part of like the characters that they're trying to lock away towards like the final part of the series.
Yeah. And also gets a mention in the South Park episode. So he
I don't remember that one. I do remember the one with Cthulhu.
I guess they must have branched out from Cthulhu then, as far as
Actually, I take it back. It was a South Park video game called Fractured But Whole.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't played that one.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that one.
I've got the Stick of Truth, but I didn't get that far in it. But I noticed that the Fractured But Whole is now available for the Switch for like $14. So, you can always, and they're all in their superhero costumes for that. So looks like it might be a little bit more fun than the Stick of Truth.
Yeah, they look like this one looked like a raccoon got something, in his story.
That's Cartman.
Yeah.
He's the coon. That's his name. That's his costume name.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, getting close to ending time. I want to give congratulations to one of our diehard listeners, Sam, on the birth of his son.
Oh wow! Yeah.
Yeah, Sam 2.0, which is
right.
The name we're giving it. I don't know if
he says either Sam Jr. or the second, but 2.0 is more 2020.
Yeah. Second coming.
Yeah, we thought, there we go. Sam the Second Coming. Now that'd be a name there.
Oh, that's even better. I like that. Yeah, I might like that better.
Yeah, we may have to pressure them to use that one.
The son of Sam.
Yeah. Oh, that's nice.
he can really give him.
That should have occurred to me right off the bat.
Yeah, he can really give him down the road later on and just, hey, you're the son of Sam. So that's,
yeah.
You're
gonna give him a pet dog and all that.
Well,
Don't listen too closely to this dog.
Yes, don't take it too much to heart what it tells you to do. Yeah, well, anyway, the stars are no longer right. We must cease all discussion until they align again next month. 30 Minutes of H.P. Lovecraft is sponsored by Nilar Lepotop Delivery Service. This podcast was created in association with the LovecraftPod.com and the Logan Speculative Fiction Group with the help of Logan County Public Library, Lovecraft Eternal Facebook page, the H.P. Lovecraft Literary Podcast, and the Great Old Ones. Special thanks to Katie Tyson and Joshua Dukes for their assistance. Until we meet again, may you avoid the wrath of Princess Cthulhu.
We did tonight.